As you know, SDG 2030 countdown is on to help you, community, C-suite leaders, constitutional leaders, learn from cross-cultural exchanges and achieve breakthroughs. We have curated Chat SDG, and we have a very exciting episode for you. A very dear friend of ours is on board today, someone from the land of Northern Lights, not known for its city lights, Jeroen Kraaijenbrink. Now, what he does is even more exceptional. Jeroen is involved in strategy. Yes, it is a purpose defining word, very often forgotten but critical. Sometimes I feel SDG is an opportunity to power strategic development goals. Well, let's not get sidelined. Going back to our guest, Joren, he is here. He is a very well written author and a keynote speaker and a consultant, someone who has dedicated their life in transforming the community. So, hello, Joren, how are you?
Hello, thank you for this wonderful introduction. I'm good. Coming from the Netherlands, so there's not much northern light here, by the way. We have to go a bit more northern into Scandinavia, but we witnessed it last couple of months. Yeah, doing great. In the middle of, I think, a lot of exciting activities with our company Strategy Inc., where we're really building on exactly on this topic is how we look at so many problems in the world, and strategy is of course not the solution, but it is one of the elements, one of the steps that, or one of the parts where we also have to look at solutions. So very excited to talk about this in this podcast.
Absolutely. So, Hiran, diving straight into our viewers' questions, Hiran, you argue that traditional profit-centered strategies are reaching their expiry date. Can you elaborate on some specific examples of how this approach has backfired for businesses in the recent years?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and maybe briefly explain profit center means really the financial, economic dominated approach to business, where return on investment, profit growth, EBITDA, and so on, that's the one single important criteria. I think the best example is during COVID, where we saw what some have labeled the great resignation, people leaving their jobs during COVID, where COVID was not the cause, but it changed the situation and people were reconsidering their jobs. And I read a number that like more than 50% of the global workforce considered quitting their jobs during that time. They might not actually quit, but I think that's a very clear example where you show that the conditions of working in, let's say, profit-oriented organizations are not that suitable anymore, if they have ever been. So I think that's the best example, large scale withdrawal from people moving to other organizations.
Absolutely. You're in this also, this migration of entire processes from being in the offices to being virtual. There is a lot of employee burnout, and also, in other sense, also there is a lot of employee burnout, and high turnover rates are major issues across industries. How can a human-centered strategy help companies create a more positive work environment and retain top talent in this environment?
Mm-hmm. If you look at how I define human-centered strategy, it's human skills, human relationships, human values, human needs, and human conditions. And human-centered strategy pays attention to all five. Human skills means allowing people to bring in their full self, not just their hands, but their imagination, their emotions, their gut feelings. So that's using human skills. We like that as human beings. Human relationships, pay attention to how people relate to each other in the job, at work, and not simply ignore that part, because being in an organization is a very important part of our social condition. Human values, we care. I think many of us care about sustainable development goals. So have strategy that link to those values. Human needs, we all have needs to contribute. We want to be seen. Pay attention to that. And human conditions mean having a working environment where we can flourish, where we feel support, are also challenged, but feel safe for making the contributions that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Friends, this is so critical. All of you who are in the field or at offices working towards achieving sustainable development goals, achieving the higher strategic mission, you have to understand interpersonal relationships is critical. Also, relationships across industry, across divisions, across departments. There is no room for ego. There has to be a human centered approach, or otherwise, someone else will fall through the cracks. Thank you so much, Joran, for highlighting this very, very, very critical issue for any organization to survive and thrive. All right, Joran, we are running short of time. So, to our next question, quickly, some might be skeptical about this human centered strategies. It looks very good on the face value, but arguing that humans themselves caused the current environmental and social problems. How do you
Mhm.
respond to this criticism?
Yeah, of course they are correct, because I think we have been causing and are causing the problems, the social environmental problems. So my answer is twofold. One is, because we created the problems, we have to create the solutions. No one else is going to do it. So we humans need to be not just part of the problem, but they need to be part of the solution. More importantly, the second aspect, I think, is if we are truly human-centered, we automatically take care of our environment and our people around us. And for this is an important quote that I remember. I have to read it, of course, but from a British philosopher, Bertrand Russell. If men were actually, and with men he means human beings, so if men were actually actuated by self-interest, which they are not, except in the case of a few saints, the whole human race would cooperate. So if we truly think about what is good for us as human beings, it is taking care of the world across all the sustainable development goals.
And you're in so spot on this analogy that you have given, this quotation that you've mentioned. Thank you for opening our minds with that. And I also remember there is a framework that you have worked upon to further ease the people who follow this approach in adopting this. So your framework highlights on 5 key aspects of being human that a human centered strategy should consider. Can you please walk us through this framework, please?
Mm-hmm. I already briefly mentioned it: human skills, human relationship, human values, human needs, and human conditions. And to see how that works, I think what you need to know is the approach to strategy that we follow is a very participative one. So we bring in a group of people from all levels, different roles, different functions in the organization together in the room. So not just top management, not just, let's say, men in suits, like a diverse group. And if you follow a participative process, you ask them about their insights, their ideas. So that relates to the human skills. By bringing them together in the same room, you break silos. So that affects human relationships, human values, and human needs. By assessing the options that you generate, by assessing the ideas against the norms and values, against the individual needs that people have, or as a group, you select those strategy that fits the values and needs. And the human conditions, the entire process, I think, is an example of how you would like to work in many organizations. You want to contribute, you want to be part of it, you want to have influence on the direction of the organization. So that's a very brief summary of how the participative approach links to all these 5 aspects.
Certainly, viewers, this is so critical. Just like in a democratic setup, local self government is the basic critical rule of how governance should be done in an organization. Participatory methods of achieving not just strategy but action are critical. I hope you will rewatch this answer. There are many nuances that Joran has mentioned. All right, Joran, going on to our next question to you. Beyond sharing and spreading the word, what are some of the actionable steps individuals or organizations can take to implement a more human centered approach towards strategy?
Mhm. Let me apologize for if I sound too self-promotional or commercial, but this has been my entire kind of driver for the last 20 years, is kind of creating a more human-centered approach to strategy. And maybe one way to look at it is the 4 pillars we have created with Strategy Inc. One is consulting. So go to find a consultant if you need one that kind of buys into this more human-centered approach compared to the traditional kind of economic analytical approach. Another one is get training. Develop your competencies, your expertise, your skills as a consultant, as a facilitator yourself, or maybe in your job, in your as a leader, as an employee, as an executive. So find trainings, programs that help you with that, and finally, kind of connect to other people, become part of the community, and that's what we're offering as well. So we're trying to, from a very expertise level, to those who are at the forefront of strategy and actually have this as their job, with our training programs, until, let's say, the lower level is the entry community part, where you find like self-learning content. And to look for this, and the single thing I think is in that, as you say, rewatch the previous answers for the 5 aspects of human-centered strategy, and then just start somewhere. Don't overcomplicate. There's plenty of seeds for finding out new directions that you can take in your role, in your job, in your organization.
Absolutely. Friends, key takeaway is continued learning, but also action, action, action. Pick something, act on it, assess the data points, assess the matrices of success, and move on. Rectify your strategy, align your strategy based on your needs in a participatory manner. Wow, what a comprehensive session, Yaro, we have had. Friends, we conclude today's episode. I want to extend our gratitude to you for thread bearing how to approach strategy in a more human centric manner, with such quirky and clear steps. Viewers, Joren's journey and experiences serve as an inspiration to all professionals looking to make positive impact in the business world and in the development world. Remember, the future of sustainability lies in strategic efforts to embrace ethical practices and drive meaningful change. Thank you for tuning in to Chat SDG, where we continue to explore the path towards a sustainable future. Namaste.